I'd like to call to order our February 6, 2024, just in time, Ava. That's very, very close. That's what I'm talking about. All right. I'd like to welcome you all to the Prescott Unified School District number 1 Governing Board meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. David, Kevin, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Item 4A, consider approving the agenda as presented.
I'll move that.
I have a motion to have a second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Item 5A, consider approving the minutes from the regular study session and voting session meeting of January 16th, 2024 as presented. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have an amendment for those meeting minutes.
Okay.
I think there should be an amendment talking about the discussion and debate and how the elections were held and conducted. They should reflect that there was a self-nomination that wasn't allowed and that Robert's rules were not really followed.
Was it a procedural issue? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll note that Ms. Kahn would like to, so is there an actual amendment that we're making to it? It's just a comment.
I think you need a motion and a second on that.
Yeah,
Sure.
for an amendment, we need a
Okay.
motion and a
All right.
second. So I'd make that motion.
And what is the exact motion? Can we say?
Repeat the motion.
That there was a self-nomination that was not allowed and Robert's rules of order were not followed correctly.
Okay. So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Hearing no second, the motion dies. Do I hear a motion for the approval of minutes for 5A of this agenda?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the previous board meeting. Let me read that correctly. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of January 16th, 2024 as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right, item 6A, we have a presentation, Galileo data presentation from Renee Steingraber.
That's me, hello. All right, Sarah, we're all set up. Do I get to click ahead? You get to click, yes. Good. Well, hello again. Seems like it's been a few months since I've been able to come and visit, so it's nice to be back and especially to come in with all the rain that we had today. So today I was asked to do a presentation on the Galileo benchmark data. So what I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm going to explain a little bit about what Galileo actually is, what subjects are tested, and why we use Galileo. I'm going to be showing you the data by grade level, and I'm going to share some I'm going to actually point out some of the things that we have seen in the data. This data was actually covered with principals last Tuesday in a meeting and actually to a deeper level than what I'm sharing with you here. But Kelsey is going to come up after me, so you'll notice her name on here as well. And she's going to follow up with some examples of what they're doing in the classrooms and at building level and district level to address some of the issues that we're seeing through the data. At the end, you'll have the opportunity for clarifications and questions. All right. So to get you started, Galileo is our K through 12 assessment. And it is a comprehensive assessment. Comprehensive meaning it covers all of the standards from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So as we assess the students in the very beginning of the year, our normal view is that not everybody's going to be 100%. They're actually quite low because they haven't been taught the standards that are shown through the Galileo questioning process in here. It is aligned to the Arizona state standards, and it's given 3 times a year. The questions are all given at grade level. The subjects that are tested, math, we have grades K through 8, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. ELA, or English Language Arts, we only test in grades 2, or we begin testing in grades 2 through grade 12. And the reason that we do that is because we have another requirement by the state, which is MOWR, Move On When Reading. And the accepted assessment from them is Renaissance. So I am going to share one slide from Renaissance with you today as well. And then science, we do grades 5 through 8 and high school biology. So the expectation, benchmark 1, as I mentioned, it's really just to evaluate where students are at in their learning when they come into us. The whole purpose of Galileo is not to give students a letter grade or to grade them on what they know or don't know. Benchmark 2, which is the data that I'm going to be sharing with you today, the goal there and our expectation is that we evaluate the students' progress towards mastery of standards. And I'm going to give you some overall data today, but we have the principals actually dig into the standards to each grade level, to each standard, to see if students have learned what has been taught up until that point, and also to understand what they still need to learn. So it's really, we're looking at the progression toward mastery of standards and the retention of the knowledge that has been taught. The end of the year, we give the tests usually in May, and what we use that data for is just to evaluate the knowledge that was taught, see how well the students did, and use that in preparation for the following year. So we're going to start with mathematics because that's been our concern a lot, that we focused on. What you're looking at here is, you'll see the OO is kindergarten, 1st grade, all the way through 6th grade. The results, this is the overall district performance levels by the test, with minimally proficient, partially proficient, proficient, and highly proficient. Those are the categories in this area. Something to take note of is right in here. Kindergarten and 1st grade, the test has audio. So the students are being talked to and talked through the test when they're taking it. That's the only grade levels where they have that. So what we do notice, especially mid-year, it does give them a little bit of an advantage. They don't have to read necessarily all of the math. They can listen to it. They can listen to the guidance through the program. So what we often see, as we do here, 2nd grade, when they have to begin reading on their own, although we do allow text to speech, they have to activate that feature, like in state tests. We do notice a little drop usually in 2nd grade when it comes to testing. If you look at the rest of the grade levels, the results here are a little higher than they were last year at this time. But what we do notice as stand out is 5th grade math. Middle school math has been a concern for a couple years, and it's been an area that we are addressing. And so if you notice here in the 5th grade math, we have a high with the 13 and 34 in here. So what do we have in there? 47.9 in the green and the blue, which is where we want them to be by the end of the year. So we do notice an increase at the mid-year test.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify then, we're looking at 49% of our kids in 5th grade are
5th grade
already
math.
showing proficiency in end-of-year standards as of December of this year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So the end of your standard.
And another point that you just brought up and mentioned, December was when our district gave the test, except for the high school. They took it in January, right when they came back. But starting December 1st, so really halfway through the year, that was when our students were tested on these tests. So moving on, again, 7th grade, the 6, 7, 8 is where we had our concerns, and kind of looking in here. These are the results of grades 7 through the high school courses of what you're looking at. One of the things that I want to, and I don't think I highlighted this one. Oh, yes, I did, yay. 7th grade, okay, the 7th grade math in there, I did want to bring attention to that. It is up a few percentage points from last year, which is nice, but since 2022, it has doubled. It has doubled. So what I understand from looking at this data, it's been a couple years where we really started looking at 7th and 8th grade, 5th through 8th grade, to say we need to do something in here. And I think we're starting to see the results from that, from those steps being implemented in those areas.
Could you tell me those percentages? I just can't see them.
See them either.
Sure, for 7th grade, do you want 15.8 and 14.4?
Okay, I'm more concerned about the kids who are struggling at grade level.
47.4 and 22.5.
Okay,
Can I ask another
Yes.
clarifying question?
Sure.
If a student is in the red, maybe that's quite concerning. Yellow doesn't mean they're struggling at grade level, correct? As a cross-country coach for years, if I said, everybody's got to run this mile in 10 minutes, if at the halfway point, 5 minutes, if I had, what are we looking at, 30% of my kids
33.
already done in 5 minutes, I'd be like, woo! I would not say, those of you who haven't finished yet are struggling. Now,
Right.
somebody who's well back, I would say, you're a struggler, we're
You
going to
are a
have to move
struggler.
along. But it's not
Correct.
the case that everybody who's to the left of that line is
Absolutely.
struggling or won't meet the
Absolutely
standards, correct?
correct.
Okay.
And remember,
Just wanted to clarify
they
that.
are being measured on standards that cover 1 year of learning. So some of those things have not been taught yet, which is the reality of the testing within there. Absolutely, 47.4 is concerning. When you look at that number, it is concerning. A difference of, and it's just in the person, I would not necessarily say struggling. 20% of those kids might be right on the cusp,
they might not, too.
and they might not, right. So that is the data. So what I'm bringing to you is the overall, and that is the data we dig into with principals and say, you need to dig deeper, because I can't identify students in this forum to let you know, but principals can, teachers can. And so that's another way that they do use the Galileo data, is they break it down to the actual students in the room to see what their needs are. So it's a great point in there. Whoops, I'm sorry.
Okay, back up, I have one quick question. If I remember correctly with my Galileo training, which has been a while, it's basically the same test at the beginning of the year, in December and in May. It's looking at a whole year's growth. So you would
Correct.
expect them to do poorly first time around, and this would show us how many kids have actually met the proficiency requirements, but we still have a half a year to go,
Correct.
because
Absolutely.
Okay.
They are not the same exact questions,
Right, but
but
the
they
same
are the
standards,
same
yeah.
grade level.
Right.
And absolutely, again, that's why I say it's so important not to use Galileo in the classroom as a grade, because it's measuring the year's standards. So in the beginning of the year, we do see they come in with less knowledge, obviously. They haven't been taught those standards. Mid-year, we see, and our goal is to get everybody out of the red into moving up, and to move to the right of that line, to be in the green and blue. One of the other areas that has been a big concern in the past was like Algebra 1. And that has been very low, where what I'm noticing like this year, there's a huge difference in algebra. In fact, from last year, in the green and the blue, there was 5.4%. This year, there's 36.7.
That's quite a
So there's a significant gain in there. And the one thing I can, from personal experience, and being contacted by math teachers at the high school, they're focusing on the standards. They're using the Galileo 5-question quizzes. They're making some of the other things, but they are really focusing on the standards in Galileo. So
Is
that's
that
pretty
a-
nice to see.
Is that a change, that the way that they're making those improvements this year? Is the instruction different? How is that happening?
How is that happening?
So there's a
Kelsey,
few
will-
reasons why that's happening. As a district, the last year and a half, we've really been focused on standards-based instruction. Are we teaching our standards to the level of proficiency that they need in order to be successful on these state tests? But also, do we know what that looks like? And do we have formative assessments, which are those quick 5-question quizzes that are assessing that all along the way? So we've really been pushing for them to be assessing each standard as we go, instead of waiting for the larger
So that's maybe a change from previous years in that we're doing that assessment on a more regular basis.
Around
To
those
evaluate.
standards, yep. The other thing that's different is we're on year 3, I believe, of the curriculum at the high school. So
Okay.
it took a couple years for teachers to really figure out how you fit all of those pieces together, what's the best way to teach that, the standards through that curriculum. And so they're really getting comfortable with what that looks like. Now, with high school, there's still some areas within that curriculum that we have concerns about. There's still some gaps, obviously because Arizona standards are very different than anywhere else in the nation. So we are seeing some areas where we could even improve further, but those
Yeah,
are the biggest.
well, I think there will always be areas we can improve further.
Correct.
You know, I look at this like, sorry to interrupt you, Renee, but
No, not a problem at all.
it's like learning a language to me. You know, I can go to Mexico and I can get in a taxi cab and I can make my way and speak to the cab driver well enough to survive. So I'm minimally proficient in Spanish, but if I stayed there for a semester or a year, I would become much more proficient. So what's our level of proficiency that we want those students to be at? What's the fluency level, like in the proficient and highly proficient? Like, how do we tell that somebody is highly proficient? So somebody that could be approaching proficiency might be just fine, and maybe they don't test well.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So obviously, by the end of the year, we want everyone in the green
Right.
and the blue. That's the ultimate goal, right? And that's why I say the importance of the Galileo data is not just to look at it this way, but for the principals, for teachers to look at their class and identify the students who are so low.
Right.
And teachers have that experience with their students
Exactly.
to say, I know how she tests. Ava tests like this.
Yes.
You know, I can look at her test and see that she's missed these things. I could pull her aside and give her 5 questions on that standard to see, you know, let me check her knowledge at that level.
So a student could be, on any given day that they're giving this test, they could have not had breakfast, could have had, you know, a family issue the night before. So teachers are really the key to identifying, well, something didn't go right for this student in this test. And they're addressing that in the classroom on a regular basis, is what I'm hearing you say.
Correct.
So are
Health-
the assessments that they do in the classroom to do that, are they according to the curriculum, or are they according to what they are tested quarterly on Galileo? So how do they align all this?
I'm going to defer to Kelsey for that one.
So they're all standards based. So it has,
Well,
our
yeah.
curriculum is aligned to standards, but we're assessing for standards. We're not assessing what's in the curriculum. We want to know, can they do the skills that our standards are requiring? So I hope that answers part of that question. But yes, teachers are assessing all along the way. They're not just waiting until Galileo happens. They're doing sometimes a quick check for understanding. They're having a conversation. They're looking at pieces of writing. They're looking at how did a student solve a math problem. Some of them are also doing multiple choice or essay type scenarios to see, do they know what we're asking them to know? And part of it is, this is one day in time, but teachers are collecting data
Right.
all along the way.
So those assessments, those daily assessments, or it may not be daily, it might be weekly or
Yeah, that'd be
every other
acceptable.
day or something. Those are happening
Monitor and adjust,
as
yeah.
they're using this to prepare for these exams.
We might be assessing every few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We might say, okay, here's the next one, go ahead and put that on your whiteboard, show me what you got, and I can look around the room really quick and say, Ava's got it, oh, Kevin's struggling still, that type of thing. So that happens in classes frequently. So we've got lots and lots of informal assessments, seriously, multiple times per hour.
Yeah.
That could be happening, certainly dozens of times in a week, potentially. Are we recording all that data? No, I'm just making mental note. She's got it, he doesn't quite. Nancy looks like she's just about there, et cetera. Some of the things are more formal, and we record them and take a look and do a deep dive into which strands, which standards are we not where we need to be, and who's there, who's not, who in that red is way behind, who in that red is really close. If I need everybody to finish in 10 minutes and it's been 5 minutes and I've only got 2 kids who finished out of 60, I'm concerned.
You
That's a
need to
problem. We should
reteach.
have a few who have finished at that point. But if I've got 40% of my kids who have cross the finish line at the 5-minute mark of a 10-minute race, I'm thrilled. That's pretty good data in some cases. Other grade levels, it's concerning for us for sure, and we're digging in
I have
to
just
make those
one more
adjustments.
quickie before you go on. Can I assume that our kiddos that are minimally proficient, if as a teacher I could deep dive into the data and see how close they were to becoming proficient?
Absolutely,
And I
right.
would know exactly how close they were to that
Correct,
line? Okay.
Correct. Right, there are ranges within each of those categories. And so teachers can look at the number, if it's 100 to 200 and, 50 is maybe the lower, maybe they were 49. So a teacher has the ability to look at that, And Andy, thank you for bringing up the point about a little bit more assessment, because the important thing to remember about Galileo, this was December, it's February.
Yeah.
This is now not the time for teachers to go back and say, oh, let me look back and get a general, but we're past that. And as you said, they've learned more for a month. So
And now
it's
they're
so
doing the
important.
interventions regularly that they decided
Yes.
needed to be done in December.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. So for English language arts, as I said, we give the assessment to grades 2 through 12. Some of the things in here that we will see, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, but in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, we give them Renaissance test. And as I said, that's because it's a state-approved test that meets the assessment requirements that we have to provide data to the state 3 times a year. So you'll see up here I have October and February. October and February are there because those are the dates we submit this data to the state. However, October tests were truly taken in August. Okay? They are, when students come right into our buildings, within the first couple weeks, they're tested so we can get an idea, where are they? Where are they coming to us? And then February was actually December as well. They're just due February 1st. So I didn't change the dates on there. This is the data that we actually submit to the state. So the goal, of course, is to get everybody out of the significantly at risk, which, like Linda referred to, the red section over there. The same is true of these tests. And you'll notice, looking at overall at the whole district, K through 3, all of our buildings, 42% at the beginning of the year were significantly at risk. When we tested in December, that has dropped to 24%, which is awesome. It is really decreased. And another really significant thing I think to notice is we have an additional about 157 kids maybe that have moved into the at or above benchmark. And just like in Galileo, you have the ranges, some are on the borderline, some are not. But again, the goal is to get them out of significantly at risk and move them into the at or above. And this is halfway through the year data for our kindergarten through 3rd grade.
Renee, are benchmarks a one and done when they give the benchmark, or can they retest them on the same benchmark?
No, it's their one and done
Okay.
for those. So slightly different with Renaissance, it is a time period. The Renaissance STAR tests are very different in Galileo in that Galileo gives grade level questions. STAR assessments are computer adaptive. And so what that means is a student coming in as a 3rd grade level starts the test at a 3rd grade level. As they answer questions correctly, they'll get harder. As they answer questions incorrectly, it will get easier and easier until it levels out so you have an idea of where they're at. I think one of the most important things about the Renaissance data for our younger learners is the foundational reading skills that they're being tested on. It's called STAR Early Literacy, and it's audio driven for the students. So they listen, but it is checking to see if they have the foundational skills needed to be good readers. Galileo's grade level questions, that's what it is. But our STAR data, our Renaissance data, really tells us, do they have that foundational skill that they need to be good readers?
One of the things I find most interesting on the right-hand side is look at our kindergarten this year, from 29% significantly at risk to 13. That's our first year where we've had what you might call a normal year for kids. Our
Yes.
little Ks coming in this year have actually had a true kindergarten year. where they haven't been at home, they haven't been in and out, it hasn't been a revolving door. And that's, to me, that's amazing.
Good point.
And that just thrills me to see that it's down to 13.
A big part of that is a lot of our kids come to us from our own Discovery Gardens preschool, where they're working
That's just
very
incredible.
assiduously on early literacy skills, et cetera. So you're right. The fact that 29% of those kids at the beginning of the year were already not at risk for not meeting the standard that they need to by the end of the year, and we're down to 13, that's really pretty remarkable.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, there's a Goligoski contributing.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's it. Pretty sure, yep.
You probably
And have,
Good, thank you, Jane, for pointing
Skews
that out,
things up.
because it really is. It's really nice to see some changes within there. So
Are-
as we move in
Renee, I'm
with-
sorry, one other quick question. Are we seeing growth in first and second grades? Because the total count from October to February has gone up in both of those by about
The
20,
totals.
21. How does that impact the numbers of significantly at-risk students?
It all depends on the students that come in.
Okay,
You know, if they come in
so you don't see
strong,
a
they're gonna-
trend?
Right, it's
anyway?
just kind of a basis in there. You mentioned something important, though, it's growth, and I don't have slides on growth, but both Galileo and Renaissance track growth, which I think is so important, because we have those students that come in significantly at risk. And to have a third grader come in at a first grade level and expect them to be all the way up to, you know, the end of
Yeah.
the year, third grade by 1 year is extremely difficult. And so we do have measures in there that we can say, are they growing appropriately for their age level and their ability?
Okay.
So it's more individualized.
And I'll just piggyback on that really quick. We do have kids that come in really, really low. When they make, a grade level of progress, even if it's not to fully proficient for third grade or whatnot, we're pretty thrilled. By the same token, we have kids that come in and they're fairly proficient to start with. If they don't show a lot of growth during the year, we're concerned about that as well. We're looking for the proficiency and the growth from all kids at all grade levels. And one of the neat things that Galileo does that we're not showing tonight just for lack of time because I talk too much, et cetera, is that it gives us a good plot graph for the kids who have shown proficiency and growth, the kids who have shown neither proficiency nor growth, those who've just shown proficiency and those who've just shown growth. And we can see from the bubbles in a class, if I'm a teacher, I can look and see, how am I doing? I want everybody in that upper right quadrant and nobody in the lower left quadrant. How many do I have in each quadrant? That tells me a lot. And I can look at each kid, and I can do that by strand as well, by pieces of the curriculum and the different state standards. So we can dive down pretty deep. Way more data than we can ever effectively use in some cases, but it gives us a lot to go on to adjust our instruction and help every kid, whether it's a kid who comes in fairly high or a kid who comes in fairly low. We're concerned about all of them.
But I was going to say, we can make a generalization about kiddos that come in mid-year. Typically, they tend to be a little lower.
Yeah.
They haven't been going through our schools. They haven't, and families that transition a lot, you could say there's some, factors there as well.
Yeah.
Sure, transiency.
But we take them all, and we love them
Yeah.
all.
There are exceptions to that. Sometimes we get a kid who comes in, we go, whoa, fantastic.
sure.
But
Yeah,
yeah, Marty's exactly right. If you get 5 kids coming in between November and January, there's probably 4 who are on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. So we're going back to Galileo in here in grades 2 through 6. So recalling that these tests are given in August, and then they're given again in December. For our second graders, and we've discussed whether to give these tests in second grade or not, because they have to take Renaissance. So what is the right, time to give them? But what we've determined is that it's really their first exposure to a standardized test with grade level questions and the technology piece that they don't get. And that is so important for state testing. Galileo tests have multi-answer questions. They have drag and drop questions where kids have to manipulate and move things in there. And so what we do notice in the data that especially in second grade, that technology skills come into play. It's the students have to read, they have to understand how to drag and drop and how to click on, they'll work really hard, but they have to select 2 answers for the question and they only select 1, so they're wrong. So those are little things that we find. And what I'm also seeing is the results that we're seeing here are very similar to last year at this time of the year, with the 4th through 6th actually being a little bit higher. We see some increases in there. Notable in here, a big difference in the highly proficient in grade 4. That is higher than the previous year in there. So moving on to the 7th through high school in here, again, in English language arts, we often see a slight kind of drop in there. And it's very interesting to me, and we've talked to teachers and talked to principals about the importance of exposing kids to questions, that they really have to like put things in order, or they have to understand that there's 3 answers to something, to a question. Because I still see at this grade level, when I dig into questions, that questions are missed because they answer 2 right answers and miss 1 in here. So this is, like I said, pretty much what we see in here. The ELA in grade 10, again, the highly proficient, that's way above numbers that I've noticed in the past in here with the ELA.
So just to clarify, that's a fourth of our kids who back in, this is for the high school, who
Correct.
back a month ago were already showing they've achieved highly proficient status for end of year standards. Is that what I'm?
That's absolutely
Okay.
correct.
That's pretty remarkable.
That is absolutely correct. Okay. So last, science in here. Some of the issues that we've had in science through the years was really the consistency in testing. The high school didn't test at all for a few years. They never would test the, science, and I'm not sure why. That was a precedent before I came in. And so we did get the biology on board because a few years back, that's what the state was testing, was the biology, so we got biology on board. And I'd say it's only been the last maybe couple years where we've seen more consistency in actual testing taking place at the science level. So here's what we're seeing currently in our mid-year science test results. Something I want you to take notice of. You'll see a grade band 3 through 5 and a grade band 6 through 8 in there. Grade 6, 7, and the biology, well, 6 and 7 are grade level questions for the students. However, grades 5 and 8 are not, and that is because the tests are similar to the state tests. And the AZ Sci, which is given to our students in grades 5, 8, and in 11, they measure the different grade levels within them. So the tests that we give our students in Galileo are meant to try to replicate what they're getting tested on at the state level, which is why there'll be a couple questions from 3rd grade, a couple questions from 4th grade, and then questions from 5th grade on the 5th grade tests, and so on. That are in there. And again, it's questions that are through the entire year that are to be taught. So here's our science. And then we have Kelsey.
So we're going to do that.
So I know the big question is, what do we do with all of this data once we have it? So, a few different areas that we are focusing on. The first one is grade levels and or content teams are working with building principals and instructional coaches to look at what are our biggest areas of need and how can we address those. What's nice is that our instructional coach and our principal really work as a team with those teachers to go, how can we support you? What do you need? What systems do we need to put into place? Can we get you some more support? What does that look like? There's also, you're going to see the word collaborate in here a lot. Good. Data review is not something that happens in isolation in a teacher's classroom. It happens with the principal, with the instructional coach, with interventionists who are a huge part of that, with their grade level or people looking at that. As Renee stated, we do a deep dive into standards. So we look at what standards did students do well in, what did they not do well in, what kids did well in which standards, and then we look at the kid level as well of what does each individual student need in order to grow and reach proficiency on those standards. So one of the things that we have looked at are really targeted interventions for students, and we're using something called a proficiency scale. This is some work that we started at the beginning of last year, where teachers are taking the grade level standard and they're breaking it into what does mastery look like? What does it look like if they're partially proficient? What does it look like if they're highly proficient? And so they're using that scale to help guide instruction for each of our students. What do they need to move up to that next level? So if they are proficient, how do we get them to be highly proficient? If they're only partially proficient, how do we get them to be proficient? So that's one of the components that they're looking at.
Can that be shared with us?
Proficiency skills?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love to see
Me too.
what that entails, you know.
Yes.
what does it mean for somebody to be proficient? Is it
Correct.
fluency? Is it ability to do basic things?
And what
That
you will
always
see-
escapes me.
It depends on the standard. Each standard has a very different expectation. And I think that would be a great topic to bring back to a future board meeting, is to break those apart and show you the work that our teachers have been doing. I will tell you, it is not easy work. Even teachers who've been teaching, the same grade level, same content for years, look at a standard and sometimes go, oh, I guess it could mean that they have to do this in order to be proficient. So that's a lot of the work that we've spent the last year and a half doing, is getting a clear understanding and then creating assessments that match that, so we're assessing where they truly are.
Can I assume that beyond textbooks is playing a big role in this
Yes.
with the grades? Okay.
Yeah,
Because
so where Beyond
it's
Textbooks
already-
fits into that is, we had started this work last year. We started with proficiency scales, we were unwrapping standards, we were starting to create formatives this year, which is where we came across Beyond Textbooks, and it had all of those things done. Now, what I will tell you is, I really wish the state of Arizona did that work for us and made it really clear what the expectation is. Because when I show you a standard and all the work we've had to do to decipher what that means, you'll go, that's a lot of work that we're expecting teachers just to know. So I wish that came from the state, but unfortunately we're having to create that on our own, which in turn is a great learning experience for our teachers and our teams.
Is that a kind of consensus from the board? You'd like to see some examples of what
Yes,
Kelsey was talking about in a
definitely.
future meeting? Okay,
Love to
great.
see that.
Okay. So also what we are seeing is teams are starting to create some of those formative assessments, which are the 5-question quizzes, and using that data continue to drive instruction. So once we know that a standard has been taught, assessing where students are, creating a plan for intervention, for enrichment for those students, and then with the students that we had to reteach for, let's reassess them to find out, did that work? Did that intervention work or did it not? And continuing to use that data in order to do the best possible job that we can to get them ready for all of our state assessments. So where our teams typically meet to do a lot of this work is on our Friday afternoons. We actually had a really long conversation about this with our instructional leadership team today in DLT, and it's around that Friday protected time. It takes some time and it takes some training to get teachers to have really deep conversations about not only what standards mean, but the data that we use to track that and how are we ensuring that students really are proficient. So that Friday early release time is essential to making this work happen. What we'll also see with some of our really high-performing teams is they're not just meeting on Fridays, they're sometimes having lunch together, they're meeting during common planning time, they've set their own team meetings for after school or before school. They know that, honestly, they need more than just the Friday time that we have to have a lot of time to make these conversations happen. So here's where we see some Beyond Textbooks, so you're right there with us. We are looking at the questions in Galileo and comparing them to the formatives from Beyond Textbooks to say, how do they match? What's the better option? What actually assesses the standards better? And what we're seeing is Beyond Textbooks is giving us some really good information directly aligned to those standards. You'll also see that reading interventionists are progress monitoring. So Linda, you asked if the benchmark was a one and done. Yes, benchmarks are one and done, but we're constantly progress monitoring, especially on those early literacy skills. For some of our students, that's happening up to every 2 weeks.
And that's so important
Yeah.
for kids that have test anxiety. The more you test, the more easily you can pass any kind of test.
Correct.
You get test-wise,
Yes.
so that's good.
Yep. So we are also looking at, and Renee kind of alluded to this, but we're looking at the structures that we have in place for testing. Are we creating the right kind of environment for testing? Are we setting kids up? Are we encouraging them enough? Are we talking them through that? But then are we giving them those test-taking skills that they need to demonstrate proficiency? Because we also have to look at that Galileo data and say, is it a mastery decision that they're making, or did they just not know how to navigate the test in order to show that they know? And what I will tell you, especially in our early grades, a lot of it is that test-taking navigation because it's all online. That is completely new to them, and that is a skill that they have to learn. So we are talking a lot about what that looks like. And then last but not least, our PUSD Everywhere program. What they're doing, especially for their K-8 students, is they're creating individualized intervention plans for every single one of their students who they have online. So teachers in our buildings are doing that same thing, but it's nice to see that our online program is doing that as well. And then specifically around the area of math, we are doing our trainings through ADE. We are looking at middle school math adoption right now, and so we are in week 4 of piloting one of our 2 finalists of curriculum. And what we're seeing is the curriculum that now is matching our standards looks very different than the curriculum that we have been using. So we're going to see some gains through that, but we're going to continue training and really helping support those middle grade math teachers to increase test scores. So that's our big plan of action. Is there any clarifications or questions that you might have?
Kelsey, could you walk us through just what you learned last year? And obviously there's some improvements here, but what was glaring and what changes did you make and that you feel like you're going to be successful this year?
The test environment and those test-taking skills is a conversation that we had a lot when we first started Galileo, and it had tapered off a little bit, but bringing that back out to the forefront. Do we have a testing protocol in place? Do students, are they taking it seriously? Are teachers taking it seriously? What kind of tone are we setting? Are we getting accurate information? So that's been a big conversation that we've been having to make sure that we really truly know where kids are. The other change that I will tell you is, yes, this is great data, it gives us a snapshot, but really it's those formative assessments along the way that are going to be even more impactful than this data, because we can intervene in that moment instead of waiting even a few weeks or a couple months to go, well, this test showed me this. No, I want to know right now. And really doing that work to align the standards expectation and those formative assessments is a really, really good push in the right direction. That's something that teachers were just kind of expected to have and to be able to know how to do, but any of you have seen tests or if you've taken the practice tests online, they are not easy to navigate. And that's a whole different set of skills for teachers to be creating tests that match how students are going to be tested.
That's good. The only question I would have again is with beyond textbooks, because I'm really interested in that, is it's making it easier for teachers to do a deep dive into the standards then, because it's being hopefully done for us and saving us a lot of time.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, so with beyond textbooks, again, we found that, not found it, but we discovered that it was very similar to the work that we were doing. We knew that when we started this work last fall, we were on a 3 to a 5 year process to get this work completed. And so that becomes a time element of, we're spending all of this time just unwrapping standards and creating systems to help us better understand. And it was years before we'd get to do a lot of training on how do you use them, how do you implement. What Beyond Textbooks has done is it's given us that 3 to 5 years worth of work, and we say, okay, we have all this, we have a clear direction of what those standards mean, we now have the formative assessments that go along with it. Now let's just focus on training teachers how to use that to plan instruction and how to assess instruction.
Can you give me a little idea of what Beyond Textbooks is?
Yes, so for us, Beyond Textbooks is really just instructional resource supports. There are some districts who use it as a curriculum, but I don't think that that's the right direction for us. What we are using primarily from Beyond Textbooks are, first and foremost, the unwrapped standards document. So what the state gives us for a standard is 1, maybe 2 sentences. What you'll see in the unwrapped documents from Beyond Textbooks is each standard is 3 to 5 pages of information about what is required to meet mastery of that standard. So there's a lot of additional information that we have to create clarity around what does a student need to know, what do they need to be able to do, and what are some examples of how we can tell if a student has mastered that.
Good.
Yeah, so those are incredible documents. It takes a lot of information and compiles it together. The other part that we're using is the common formative assessment that goes along with it. So there is 5 question assessments that have been created just for those standards. And so we are using the unwrapped document and the formative document to backwards design. So we know what the outcome is. We know what students need to know and be able to do. Now let's build our instruction to match that. So that is a shift. Typically we've done it the other way around. So really starting with that end expectation in mind is where we're going with that. There are additional pieces within Beyond Textbooks. There's some teacher-created resources that you can use as a supplement to reteach or enrich for each standard. And the nice thing is that you click on a standard, it brings up all of this information, and it brings up a bunch of resources that fellow educators have created that help teach that standard. If you've ever heard of Teachers Pay Teachers, I like to say that Beyond Textbooks is really kind of a Teachers Pay Teachers on steroids because there's a lot more there. It's directly aligned to our Arizona standards because it's created mainly by Arizona teachers. And the key thing is all of those resources have been vetted by Beyond Textbooks staff, where with Teachers Pay Teachers, anybody can post anything, and so we don't really know if it's teaching to the level of mastery that we need. Where Beyond Textbooks, we're guaranteed that it's aligned and it's teaching to the level of proficiency that we're expecting.
And was Beyond Textbooks actually developed solely out of the Vail School District?
It was Vail.
It was? Wow.
Yeah, so it is solely out of the Vail School District. They have created a system and a network where they have expert teachers who this is what they do, and then they're teaching it. But what I also really appreciate about Beyond Textbooks is now they've got a huge network. I think they have over 120 different districts who are using these materials. And they have teachers who are using them and giving feedback instantly. So they're constantly changing and refining and improving resources because they're getting lots of feedback from lots of different perspectives. But they vet all of that to make sure that it's still hitting that target of what does that standard require.
It's tremendous.
Kelsey will give us more examples of this next month when we meet together at your request, but I'll just give you one really quick. I just looked up math standards. I found 7th grade, and here's the very first standard. Here's what it says, and then Beyond Textbook is going to, when she says unwrap, it's going to help us determine what does that actually look like. A kid who's highly proficient in that, what does that look like? A kid who's fully proficient, what would that look like for this standard? A student who's partially proficient, minimally proficient, et cetera. So here's the very first standard. It says, compute unit rates associated with ratios involving both simple and complex fractions, including ratios of quantities measured in like or different units. Probably your head just exploded, but if it didn't, then you're ready for the next step, which is to unwrap that. This is 7th graders, what they're supposed to do. I don't remember how many we had, but we have a handful of kids who already can do every one of the standards at a highly proficient rate as of December. And we've got other kids who are fully proficient, then we've got kids who are partially proficient, et cetera, et cetera. This is challenging stuff. There's people out there who say, well, your kids can't do math. Not exactly. We don't have a high percentage of kids who can, at this point, compute unit rates associated with ratios involving both simple and complex fractions, including ratios of quantities measured in like or different units. There's some very difficult, challenging things that kids are being asked to do. We love that the bar is super high. We're always aiming for that. And we're getting everybody as far as we can, and these are the ways that we're doing that.
Well, that's encouraging to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
To hear that we're not lowering the bar,
No, it's
that we are keeping the bar high, and that's important to me.
Yeah, us too. My only concern comes when people take that high bar and they whack us over the head with it and say, you're not doing good enough. I say, nope, our standards are way up here and we're always aiming for it.
I was curious for our students with special needs and how this affects them. You know, I guess a couple of questions. Does that have an impact on this data that you've provided, which I'm sure it does? And then the follow-on to that would be, does it help? So I know there are parents out there that don't want their children receiving services for whatever reason. They'll say, no, I don't want my child in those special interventions. They just need to learn to struggle through. Does this help inform teachers to have those discussions with parents to say, we've identified some areas, maybe this kid's not making progress throughout the year, and they're stuck in that red zone or bordering on the red to yellow or whatever. Does that help teachers to have those discussions? And then for the students that are in our special education programs, what types of special interventions do we do for them based on this data?
Great questions. Those are things that we're talking about a lot, and I don't know if we have an exact perfect solution to that yet, but it's something we're working towards and we're building right now. With standards-based instruction, like we are doing, where we're really focusing on those standards, when you get to interventionists or special education, there are ways that those teachers can really support grade level standards, where sometimes we're trying to fill in gaps from, you know, 2, maybe 3 years prior. But are we giving them the interventions that they need in order to access and be successful at grade level content?
Right.
And so we're working on some systems, and that's where those proficiency skills are really important, because you can put those, and we've built them intentionally where you have a teacher version and a student version, but you can put that in front of both and you can go, okay, what skills does this student have? Can they do all of these things, the building blocks that get you to be proficient at this standard? If not, they might have 2 or 3 of them. We just might have to fill in this one piece. Or maybe they don't have any of them. It gives us a lot more direction instead of us trying to fit things that make it work. We're doing intervention just in time for them to be ready for that grade level content that they're being taught.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
I would say, and you may already know this, but when you have a student who's not showing growth, it just, like, no matter what you're doing, they're not showing growth. That sometimes can indicate some kind of learning disability or some special need. And that's when we pull in those special ed teachers and those interventionists to diagnose. They'd give diagnostic tests to even drill down further as to what is that skill that they need to work on. But yeah, we do, all students are required to learn grade level standards. So even a student with special needs needs to be exposed to those grade level standards. We're trying to teach them. So we do look at that data. Our special ed teachers will look at that data and see where are they growing, where are they not growing. Sometimes you'll have a kiddo that's proficient in math but not in reading. So it does inform our interventionists, and it informs our gen ed teachers who may not even realize they've got a student that needs some special attention.
The other piece is you guys are seeing big picture data that
Right.
we're showing you here, so big percentages. But we have reports that we can print out for each individual child of here's how they did on every single one of the standards that they were assessed on. And so what a teacher would do with a parent is say, okay, here's the ones that we haven't taught yet that we're getting to, but here's how they did on standards that were assessed. They've got all these. If we can just work on these 2 or 3 or 4, that's where those targeted interventions come into play. They can really drill down into what specific areas that those students need in order to move them to that next group.
Can I share an observation from the 30,000 foot level? I get to be the one to input the mower data, which was that Renaissance data. And it's more focused, like Renee said, on those foundational reading skills and learning to read. Galileo starts to transition in reading to learn. And I noticed this year, and Renee and I talked about it, putting in the mower data. You know, last year, our second graders were what we kind of call that COVID class that really got a lot of online instruction. And second grade was not progressing last year like we were hoping. But I remember hearing principals talking all the time, how can I get interventions into those second graders? What can we do to help those second graders? And then this year, when the third grade, now they're third graders.
That same group of kids.
That same group of kids, where now they're moving to reading to learn, and that mower data really improved. And I have to give kudos to our teachers and our principals who were really focusing on that. I did see third grade a little bit in Galileo. You know, maybe we're probably still, I talked to some principals actually this week about that, of continuing those supports for that group of kids, but I'm really encouraged at the closing of the gap.
So when's the next assessment that we have? We're gonna have state testing, right? And then we'll have this again, and when is that timeline?
So state testing starts, gosh, I don't remember the first date. It's either end of March.
Early April.
Yeah, you got it.
End of March, early April.
Yeah, we know, so end
AZ
of March.
size starts the end of March,
Uh-huh.
and then April, really through April is the majority of our testing. will
Gotcha.
happen.
Okay.
The ACT, I think, is April 10th.
All right. And will you do another Galileo assessment, and what is that timeline?
So that won't be until May.
In May. Okay, so end of year, true end of year.
Yeah,
Great.
true end of year.
And mower too.
Yes.
Renaissance.
That would be our benchmarks, yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so we'll see those. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Great growth. Do we have any more discussion or any questions? All right, great. Thanks, Renee. Kelsey, you might as well stay up there.
I'm gonna stay.
All right. All right. So item 6B, preview of February 16th, 2024 Professional Development Day. Kelsey.
I love those trees.
I like octagon trees.
We're trying to pretend it's spring and summer right now.
It's all about growth, right?
Oh, okay.
It's all about growth. Trees grow, yes. So we are in the midst of planning our third professional development day for teachers for the year. Kind of call this one our Super Bowl. I know the National Super Bowl is this week, and ours is really next Friday.
Ours is better.
Ours is yeah. And I'll just preface it, Taylor Swift will not be at ours. She'll probably be there this weekend, but
We
not at ours.
can't become Swifties.
Swifties,
You have to
yes.
do that on your own time, Linda.
Yeah, if she did come, that would be amazing, but I highly doubt it. So this professional development day is actually one of my very, very favorites that we put on, and we've had a lot of requests from staff to make sure that we continue doing this style of professional development. We call it a choose your own PD day. And so we have a couple of options for teachers to choose from. The big structures of the day are teachers can choose to participate in Kagan, Cooperative Learning Day 1 or Cooperative Learning Day 2 if they've already taken the first day of that in previous years. And again, that is an all-day training. The other option that teachers have is a choose your own professional development day. So we have 3 one-hour-long sessions that are happening at the high school, and then they have site-based meetings in the afternoon. So what you have in front of you right now is the actual schedule for that day. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what these pieces are. So what is Kagan? Kagan is something that you hear a lot about in our district. You hear a lot about cooperative learning and why that's important. So Kagan is a cooperative learning structured program. The difference is it's very research-based, and the whole goal is engagement. So typical traditional classrooms have a teacher who's standing in front asking questions. You might have 1 or 2 students who are responding. Now the difference with Kagan is you use these structures to give every single child in that classroom an opportunity to engage with the content and the knowledge that you're introducing. So you give them time to discuss with their peers. You get time to share ideas, so every student has an opportunity to talk and discuss and participate. So that's what we're teaching through Kagan, is what are those structures that you can use within your classroom to get that kind of interaction among your students. And I will tell you, it entirely changes the culture within a classroom. So it comes from students just sitting there being complacent and listening and writing what they need to, or doing the work that they need to really having to engage and interact with the knowledge that they're being asked of. So that's what we're teaching our teachers in Kagan. And this is the 3rd time we've been able to bring Kagan. So Marty, when was the first year that we brought that? Was that 10 years ago maybe?
The year that I left for 2 years.
Oh, okay.
So that was 2013.
So 2013, so it was, 11 years ago or so. So this is the 3rd time. So we're getting a bunch of new teachers who haven't had the opportunity to go to a formal Kagan training to participate. Choose your own PD. A couple questions you might have around that is, how do sessions develop? So the ones you see on your agenda, how did you come up with those? So what we did in December, and we've been planning since December, this takes a while, but we sent out a survey to all of our staff in PUSD and said, hey, we're putting together a Choose Your Own PD. What do you have to share? Would you be willing to present to your colleagues and your peers? What topics are you passionate about? What aligns with our goals that you could help present? So almost every single one of those sessions that you have on that page are created and presented by PUSD staff. They are willing to step up and say, I'll spend some time doing that. I'm going to organize this for my colleagues and share some of the experience and knowledge that I have. We also did get to bring in a few community partners. So you'll see on there, there's Robin Bryce, who's from Yavapai College, who's former PUSD teacher, coming back, and she's doing 3 sessions, which is amazing, and they're some of our most popular 3 sessions. We also have a certified financial planner who's coming in to do financial literacy with the teachers. So we're always looking at what additional pieces can we bring in for teachers where they feel like hey, I've learned something, this was really beneficial for me, getting a variety of options. So when you look at the list of presenters, and sorry, I don't think presenters are actually on your page, you just have the topic names. But we have classroom teachers, we have administrators, we have OTs, we've got PTs, we've got classified staff. So we have a real big variety of staff who are choosing to lead these sessions. And then I would like to give a huge thank you to our PUSD Education Foundation. They have decided that because we have these staff members who are going above and beyond to put together these sessions for our staff, they're actually providing them all with gift cards as a thank you. So that's a pretty big incentive and a way to acknowledge these teachers who are doing a lot of extra work to help make our district better. So some of the session offerings that you can see, Canva for educators. This is one of the Robin Bryce presentations. This is all a digital platform of how you can create anything from presentations to flyers to parent communication to social media posts, and they look really pretty. So that's a big incentive. That's a fun piece. So everything from outdoor management, self-care, travel reimbursement. You'll see a lot of math. You can tell math is a focus for us across the board. Fine visual motors, all about small groups, special education knowledge, writing strategies. I won't read them all to you, but AI is one that we're starting to see a lot of interest around. And so we have an AI introduction. You'll see in our next session, we have ChatGPT and how teachers can use that as a resource. But everything from data tracking to dyslexia, whole brain teaching, science, we really have a great variety of sessions within what we're doing next Friday. And I will tell you, I've had a lot of teachers go, this was really hard to make a decision because I really want to do Kagan, but I really want to do some of those sessions as well. So we've had to kind of work with where could we get the most bang for our buck, but we're also working with principals who are like, I really want this to come to my site. So we'll work with those teachers to even provide that opportunity at some of our sites later on if they're going to Kagan, or if they're full and they're not able to participate in these ones.
So Kelsey, how many participants are we talking, teachers-wise?
So far we have a little over 200 who've signed up. I expect we'll probably have right around 250. They have until tomorrow afternoon to make their final selection.
Okay.
So a good number of staff. And this is just a day for certified staff. Our classified staff does not work on next Friday. However, we are going to move this style of PD to our November date next year so that our classified staff can participate. I know it's something that they would like to be a part of as well.
If we were to take 250 staff and go down to, say, someplace as close as Phoenix, and we were able to find the type of professional development that's this targeted to our needs, it would cost us thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which we just don't have. Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Literally do not have that kind of money. So I love that Kelsey and her instructional coaches have gotten together and said, all right, what can we formulate here that's going to help our teachers improve their craft, build their capacity, and better target student learning. It is fantastic. I'm super, super enthusiastic about it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So if a teacher doesn't sign up, what are they doing?
So if a teacher doesn't sign up, they're still expected to be there that day. They'll have to choose from which sessions we have available that morning.
Okay.
Yeah. But I hope everybody signs up. I hope
Some
there's-
people don't
Can-
check their email very often.
can we sign
let's
up?
just say that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
We've already got one of the folks at the dais, a couple of folks at the dais that are planning on being there if
Yes.
you'd like to, for sure.
Yeah, so Sarah, you can help with posting about, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sounds like a Disneyland day for teachers.
It's a lot of fun. I love having all of our
I
teachers at the
couldn't
high school
decide.
on one day.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I just have to commend Kelsey and the instructional coaches. This is a lot of work, but I love the opportunity for our staff to be the teachers and the leaders to share their knowledge. But this is definitely a Super Bowl.
That's a Super
So
Bowl.
thank you, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelsey. All right, we're going to move on to item 7. And I just want to make a statement here. Clark Tenney and I, we just attended the board president's roundtable last night. And one thing that we learned on these information items is that we cannot discuss them if we don't list exactly what's under them. And I think we've done that in the past. and it's really just for the fairness of the community. So if they see, for example, superintendent's report, and they don't see exactly what he's going to list on it, they don't really have a fair idea of what's being presented. So if he does list it, then we can, members of the community can say, hey, I want to listen to that. You know, I want to hear about that report. Okay, so in all fairness, we should probably stick to that, and I think it's good policy. I will, however, take exception to the governing board student representatives, because we really want to hear what you're saying, and I think there's great things that happen within our schools, and we just want to be able to commend what you guys are doing there. Okay, so item 7A, summary of current events. Superintendent Tenney.
Great, thank you. Handful of things. We're in enrollment season for students for next year. Those who are already with us and are coming back to us, we're getting that data from families. You're in third grade, you're planning on being here for fourth grade next year, vast majority yes, and that helps us with our staffing models and whatnot. And then we're going to be opening soon, if we haven't already, help me out, for those who are new to the district, that's already open as well. Great, just here at the beginning of February. So we're very pleased that over the last several years we've shown moderate growth in our enrollment, in spite of the fact that, as we've talked about before, there's fewer kids in Prescott all the time. We continue to draw more and more from neighboring communities. So that's a good reflection on the work that we're doing. I should have mentioned right at the beginning of the meeting and didn't. I'll mention this now. Mr. Binder is not here this evening. We have sent him to Show Low, Arizona in the middle of a snowstorm to learn about federal sexual harassment law. If that doesn't sound fun, I don't know what does. So but he's doing that, has done that all day, and he'll be back. I think there's a little bit of it tomorrow. He'll be back tomorrow afternoon, but we excuse him from that. And then Mrs. Woods had a family issue that she couldn't make it tonight, so we excuse her as well. We hope the best for both of them, and they'll be safe in their travels. A couple of other things. Let's see here. I've spent, as I've mentioned to you, my board reports. I've spent some time over the last few weeks heading down to the legislature to advocate, hosting Senator Bennett here in town to advocate for various things around legislation that will support students, and because we're right in the middle of the legislative season, and we're excited about what they'll do for us this year. Notice I said 4 instead of 2. I'm being very optimistic. Let's see here. What else? Stan mentioned last night, he and I had the opportunity to go to the County Education Service Agency. I think there were about 26 or 27 of us in the room for a board president's roundtable. I think there were about 9 of you board presidents who were there asking questions, receiving training. You've handed out a handout, I think, that we got last night that gives us some guidelines about how to appropriately conduct meetings and whatnot. So that was useful information there. Did you get home before 9 o'clock?
No.
No. Well, thanks for being there. Super. A couple of other things. Let's see here. You'll be interested to know that I guess it was just this last week, Mrs. Dillon, our former board president, has been in town, and I got to see her at Yavapai College. She asked me to pass along her good wishes to each of you, and thank you for your service. What else? There's weather outside. That's about as much as I'd like to say about that. So I'll be up at 4, driving the roads and fretting over the weather report and hoping that the people who give us information are correct. Good luck. So,
where do you get your most current information? Because I can't find it.
You can't find it. So the National Weather Service has a good website that synthesizes things pretty well. And then in addition to that, we're fortunate to have a PUSD alumnus who is a professor of meteorology at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He's a lifelong resident of Prescott, so he gets, if there's a human being who gets Prescott weather better than Curtis James, I'd like to meet him. So he is very kind to 4:30 in the morning. He'll be up responding to texts if it's a day that's like that. He needs to do something similar for Embry-Riddle, et cetera. So we rely on him a bunch. We rely on the streets department from the city of Prescott. They look at their own forecasts and whatnot, and then look at what that means in terms of the condition of the streets. That's just as important as the weather itself, right? So anyhow, there are a lot of parts of my job I don't love, but that's probably my least favorite, I'll be honest. All right. Let's see.
Sunrise.
I think I'll defer to Kevin and Ava about winter sports. Do you have some information about that, or would you like me to just mention really quickly?
But if you want to talk
Nope, I'd rather have you do that. 48% of our students at Prescott High School are involved in athletics at some point during the year, which is really phenomenal. I don't know of another school that's got that high of a ratio. We've had some great success this winter. We'll hear from Kevin and Ava about that. And then the last thing I'd like to present, do you have a couple of slides for me, Sarah? A couple of things. Mr. Frey, do you want to jump in on this really quick and give us some?
This was our latest challenge coin presentation to Kelly Maddox at the PUSD Family Resource Center. She was nominated for a coin for all the work that she does, and we went right after the last board meeting, I believe,
think that's
in
right,
January. The next day, I think, and we presented Kelly with this, and Nancy was there and did a story in the Courier on all of the recipients for the year up to that point.
And Jane, you work closely with Kelly as a longtime volunteer in the teacher's closet, which is there housed in the same facility. You've been able to interface with Kelly a bunch. Yeah, outstanding. Am I right?
She's amazing. Just to watch her work with the homeless families and the parents that come in needing supplies or clothing or books, she's extremely patient. She would have made a great kindergarten teacher.
Yes, yeah.
And if the
Fantastic.
community is interested in a donation, a charity to donate to, the Family Resource Center would be a fantastic place to donate their time, effort, items, whatever, for our students and families who need help, especially during the winter.
Super. Thanks for that. And then the next slide, this was just yesterday. Was it yesterday? I'm losing track. I think it was yesterday. It seems like days ago, if that tells you anything. I was able to go to, you can see her name on the board, Jauregui. Anybody who hasn't heard it pronounced before? Care to hazard a guess? Howdigi. She pronounces it Howdigi. Miss.
Howdigi.
There you go. It's right underneath.
Phonetically, right underneath.
Miss Howdigi is one of our relatively new teachers to PUSD. She started with us last year. She doesn't have her teaching certificate yet. She's got her bachelor's degree. She's well educated and super enthusiastic and has all of the skills she needs. She just doesn't have that piece of paper yet. So she's part of our Keystone program that we've talked about many times. And this lady is knocking it out of the park. She teaches middle school, which, God bless her right there, and she just does a great job with those kids who bring all the positives of the littles and all the positives of the big. She just accentuates that and makes great things happen. She's one of our English language arts teachers, and I was able to go to, I think it was her 7th grade class. On Monday, they were doing a Socratic seminar, if you're familiar with that. So they had kids they had studied just a little bit about an issue that they could share opinions about, how much of our personalities, how much of us is genetic, inborn, and how much of it comes from our environment. And they've done a little bit of studying about that, a little bit of reading about that, and then they had an hour-long discussion with amazing levels of participation and insights and whatnot about what they thought about various issues, asked each other questions, people would respond. They had a whole system set up for that. And it was just phenomenal. Mrs. Howdigi's in the background there. And just an example of some of the great folks that we have and some of the great things that they're doing in our classes from day to day. And I just really love what she brings to our district and what she shared with her kids that day. So those are my current events.
Great. Thank you. Item 7A2, governing board member reports. Andy?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I need to mention one more thing. We didn't drop that picture in there, though I meant to. Would you, Kelsey, do you mind? Yes, yeah, this has been all over Facebook, and we've been in the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to give us some information about Mrs. Loving and what she's been able to accomplish recently?
Yes, so Mrs. Loving is a kindergarten teacher at Taylor Hicks. Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yes, at Taylor Hicks. She started working on her national board certification before COVID hit, had some delays because of COVID. You have to do videos, you have to submit evidence of your teaching practices, but she stuck with it. And so we were able to go a couple weeks ago and give her her national board certification banner, but that is an incredible accomplishment. She's our 2nd teacher, I believe, in the district who's been able to do that. Third? Yeah, so it is a ton of work. So if you see her, congratulate her, because that's a pretty big accomplishment.
You'll see her picture on the front of our website and on Facebook, et cetera. And I'm so sorry I forgot to pull that out and have it as part of our presentation tonight. Thank you for the reminder. Absolutely, super, super proud of her. That's something that just a tiny fraction of teachers nationwide choose to pursue and achieve, and we're super, super
It's
proud
like
of
an
her.
in-depth doctorate.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It is
It is.
incredible.
It's really intense.
Great. All right, Andy?
Okay, so I met on January 25th with Dr. Harris, our Exceptional Student Services Director, and we talked about him developing site teams that he's growing at each school to develop leaders and kind of that grow your own process, which is really good to see within ESS. So I'm really happy with that. On February 1st, I got to meet with Mr. Neely at the high school, and we visited some classes. You know, I think one of the things that was brought up is just it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff and not to look around and realize, and it's important for teachers and administrators just to be able to look around and see the good things that are happening, and try not to get overwhelmed. But we went to, we went to a beginning art class, which was part of the Freshman Academy, and seeing those kids doing some of their artwork was, blew my mind, because it's stuff that, I don't think I told Mr. Neely this, I don't think I ever took an art class in school. And these kids were doing optical illusions, and it's their first art class for many of them, and the work that they did was just amazing. We talked to one student about Freshman Academy, and I think sometime in the future we should have a presentation to the board on Freshman Academy and what they're doing. I would love to see that. The PE classes, we saw some instruction going on in PE, which was amazing to see everybody engaged and active and just keeping going, learning those other skills that are not your academic skills typically, but these are kids learning lifetime skills that will keep them active for life. We saw Art 4 and AP Studio Art as well, and students giving presentations on their Art 4 projects, and AP students developing portfolios, which was amazing. Went into Ruth Street. The Winter Guard was engaged and active in there. They were working on their routines. And then the best part of the day, I got to participate in the lockdown drill for PHS, which was a lot of fun. But it was great to see the kind of the ball bearings all moving so smoothly in that activity. So it was really a really productive day, I felt. So
Some of the safety drills that we do can take a little bit of time away from learning, but it's a very, very important part.
Very important. And I want to thank Mr. Neely for putting up with me for that whole day.
All right, Linda?
I was busy with my foot.
Day-to-day stuff.
Recuperating.
I don't have much to contribute either, except that I ran into a mom when I was hiking the other day who has a kindergartner in PUSD and a daughter in first college. Is that what we call it? First
Early college.
Right? Early college. And she had nothing but wonderful things to say about both programs. She was so excited about early college and Molly Orr. She just could not say enough. So I thought, that's pretty cool. You got a K and a senior in early college.
That is
good.
pretty, Ava, you're part of that program as well, right?
Yes. And you know Mrs. Orr, right?
Yes,
Yep.
early college is
Yep.
wonderful.
Oh, bad.
All good things.
That's great. All right, so just a report from Lincoln School. Tomorrow is lunch with a loved one, and it's always, whenever they do that, they have a book fair. And then it's and I get to work the loot store, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, around all the lion loot.
The loot
That's
store,
right.
fantastic.
And then there's a PTA family dance and auction from 5 to 7 on February 15th, so right after Valentine's Day. One of the things that is sent out to parents is this weekly newsletter, and one of the things that I did notice on here was a free online tutoring for your students through the through ADE, Arizona Department of Education. Again, it's online. It's achievement tutoring to raising academic outcomes. And I just thought that was a great thing that was added, that anybody could click on that, and they have that accessible. So great.
I was gonna save that report until we had like more details, but very exciting. We're using the Arizona's offer for tutoring and embedding that So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was, went out to all the parents. I think
We're
this
putting a
is
structure
tremendous.
together. It's not just,
Yeah.
a parent can't just go and click on that and say, hey, we'll get some tutoring right now. There's a lot of legwork that
pieces.
Marty's been leading.
But Lincoln's
Wonderful.
advertising it to parents just to
Yeah,
see
Gauge
interest.
level of
and-
interest, yep.
And,
Yeah,
and
it's
start
great.
recruiting for it, so.
Yeah,
it's
Teresa's doing a
exciting.
great job there, so, great. All right. Is that anything else to add?
No.
Okay,
I
great.
wanted to see that flyer,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
for sure.
All right, then we'll move on to item 7A3, Governing Board Student Representatives. And again, you guys are free to discuss with our fine students here.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Mr. Tenney brought up briefly, our boys basketball team has won the Grand Canyon region for the first time since 2002. And not to date myself, but that is 4 years before I was born, so it's been a minute.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
And then in other sports news, our boys soccer team just eked it out into the play-in, and then I think our girls soccer team is hoping to do maybe a little more than the play-in. And this was already brought up, but our Galileo testing happened, and then alongside that, 50 seniors were randomly selected for the NAEP, which is like the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And so that testing happened, I want to say, last week. And then, yeah, that's about all except for what Ava has.
So the Hive Art Gallery, which is just over there-ish, featured a bunch of PHS artists this past week, and it was a really cool event. Spring sports tryouts are these coming couple of weeks, which is crazy. FBLA, so Future Business Leaders of America, competed at their regional competition, and Gwen Herbert, a freshman, placed second in economics overall.
Dang, that's great. So, Adam, I'm going to reach out to you now. So, there's going to be some play-in games. Do we know those dates yet, or not yet?
I don't believe so, but yeah, so I believe that boys soccer has a play-in game. It looks like most likely girls basketball will host a play-in game.
Wow.
And then both girls soccer and boys basketball would be moving past the play-in game into those because of how highly ranked they both are. So
Wow.
we'll see how that all comes out soon, but
Yeah.
lots of winter sports excitement, and wrestling's going strong as well, so we've got a lot going on.
Dang. And we've got, what, the number one scorer in the state right now in boys basketball in Mr. Tennant. And he's number 16th in the nation, I saw. Is that what? Well, let me tell you, 16th in the nation. So I just saw
Read
that.
it in the Courier, it must be right.
It's right. Thanks for reporting that. Yeah. That is a story in itself. He's tremendous. I mean, the whole team obviously is, I mean, it's just fun. And we only graduated 2 seniors here this year, so look out.
Nice.
Yeah. Had a lot of success in winter sports. You mentioned wrestling, and boys and girls wrestling have had some good individual performances as well, and their teams are moving on to sectionals, et cetera. Both the boys basketball team and girls soccer team are ranked in the top 5 in the state, if I'm not mistaken, and have had tremendously successful teams, as well as girls basketball and boys soccer have done well. Both have winning records. We're super proud of winning records. It's kind of fun for the kids and whatnot, but as I mentioned to you in my board report, what I really love is the kids are learning teamwork, and they're learning diligence, and they're learning hard work, and they're learning cooperation, and they're learning physical fitness, and so many other things from those programs. So whether we win 16 games or whether we win 6 games, there are terrific things that come out of that. I know is really formative for me. Mr. Fair, I've heard you say the same for your experiences as an athlete at PHS. And Mr. Gallagher, did you ever do any sports?
Few with Dr. Mangum over there.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I know for a lot of us in the community, it's a big part of what we are today, that we were able to not only have terrific experiences in math class, but also in choir performances and out on the track and things as well. So we love that we're a full program school.
Yeah, I love it. Go Badgers.
That's what we have to offer, is such a well-rounded kind of an offering for parents.
Absolutely.
We've really got to do that.
Badger pride. Love it. All right, we'll move on to item A, or 8, action items. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anybody would like polled or have any questions on?
I would like to highlight item 8A2, which are our donations. We do have 5 donations this month, which is probably the lowest I've ever seen, but the dollar value is pretty tremendous. So, a donation from Signal Hill Petroleum, a check in the amount of $46.44 to PHS Athletics, a donation from Sunrise Lions for a check in the amount of $3,682 for Discovery Gardens, a donation from Arizona Recycling Coalition for the 2024 recycling grant, a check in the amount of $3,665 to the district. Donation from James Cooper, donation from a local artist of frames, illustration board, and art books, set in the value of $300 to PHS, and a donation from Pamela Doheny, a small table saw and miter saw with an estimated worth of $400 for PHS. So that's great. All right.
Using it for discipline purposes, or?
It's in your office. All right.
Only threats, we don't actually carry through.
So I'd like, consider a motion to consider approving the.
Well, I have a question about the vouchers. Brian, I wanted to meet with you because it's hard to figure out. Is that good? It's hard to figure out what the vouchers are being used for, and I couldn't get up to see you.
If I pay, I'll ask for direction because the vouchers represent, if I were to print, let's just say the accounts payable vouchers, it's about 88 pages.
Oh, no, thank you.
The payroll vouchers are just that, payroll.
And that's what these are?
There's 2 different vouchers in front of you. In July, you vote to allow for us to execute warrants and vouchers in between meetings. If that wasn't done, you'd have to come in and sign every week for the vouchers that we send out.
And when we hear vouchers in this context, it's not what we often hear in the news recently of, you know, a pop-up private school that gets $7,300 from the state from a parent who says, yeah, I don't think I'll go to school, I'll go here instead. These are these are the bills that we're paying to people who provide services and things for us, yes?
A voucher is simply a packet that we're sending to the county for them to process and distribute checks. So a voucher consists of probably hundreds and thousands if it's of warrants, and a warrant is a check. So,
Yeah, they're big amounts.
Yes, they are.
Big
so,
amounts.
and payroll is payroll. So take that times every 2 weeks, and you now know what we pay our staff. And,
over 500 people.
And then the AP vouchers, like I said, I could print a report. It's not going to be a lot more.
What does
to
AP stand for?
Accounts payable.
Accounts payable.
Yeah.
Oh,
Of course.
okay.
And so Cara asked me to do that once, and I did, and then she asked me not to do it anymore. So I can do that as well. I can give the governing board members if they want,
No,
or a
I'm still
PDF.
trying to navigate the ESSER 3 monies and all that, trying to figure that out. And I thought, is that what this is?
If there was a purchase order done that we needed to pay a vendor, and it was out of ESSER money, there would be a check that is coded to the funds 346, which is ESSER. So yes, there is ESSER monies in there, and there's M&O. Any fund that we paid anyone out of, it's in that voucher.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Linda, just for clarity, you're not asking vouchers as they relate to ESAs, right?
No.
These are just perfect, okay.
Yeah, no, not at all. They're totally different.
Yeah, okay, good. Just want to make sure we're all clear. So 8, so I will actually take a motion to consider approving the consent agenda as presented.
I make a motion that we consider approving the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes, or consent agenda passes. 8A, 8B, Study and voting session. Do we have any public requests to speak? No. Okay, we'll move on. 8B1, consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Barry Tolley, head baseball coach at PHS, for student athletes and coaches to travel to Laughlin, Nevada, and participate in the Route 66 Baseball Classic Tournament. Mr. Neely.
Yeah, sadly, you're stuck with me. Poor Coach Tolley is under the weather and was not able to make it. That was not a weather joke. Don't get nervous.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh.
But, yeah, no, I was hoping you'd get the opportunity to meet Coach Tolley, who's fondly known by his athletes as Skip. But like I said, he's not able to make it tonight. But we are asking for approval. They are just barely heading into Nevada. So you'll notice that they're heading to the Route 66 Baseball Classic Tournament, as long as you guys approve. What's different about this one, in my opinion, is that it is parents traveling along with, taking care of their athletes, and also taking care of their accommodations. So it is really just the request to go over there and play. And it's actually, interestingly enough, an AIA, meaning an Arizona sanctioned event, but it's right there in Laughlin.
So if they were going 6 hours away, say, to Nogales, there's no need for the board to approve that. It's within the state, but they're going to be a quarter mile over the border into Nevada, so we're coming to the board.
Good deal. Are they so they're not fundraising, they're not asking for anything? Okay.
No, it's an interesting scenario. I think there must be some parents who are interested in going along.
I believe so.
I wonder why.
Right before spring break, right?
Oh, we're not going to let Sarah go.
No, I can't go.
You're not allowed?
Good deal.
I am.
Oh, okay.
All right. Any questions for Adam at all? Okay, great. All right, so I'll consider approving an out-of-state travel request from Skip, Coach Skip, head baseball coach at PHS, for student athletes and coaches to travel to Laughlin, Nevada, and participate in the Route 66 Baseball Classic Tournament.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That passes. Thanks. Enjoy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for spending
Happy
your evening
weather.
with us.
All right.
Yeah,
Stay dry.
drive
All right.
careful.
All right, I've got item 8B2, consider moving or approving the school's facility board's terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites. Mr. Moore.
As promised, here's your monthly HVAC unit. So again, we have a 3-tonner over at Taylor Hicks that, it's a 3-tonner HVAC. That it went kaput, and so school facility board will replace it.
Just
Only,
went out.
well, what's that?
It just went out recently.
Another one will go out, and
Yeah.
you'll see another one in March, so. Only 198 more to go.
Okay.
Brian, how much of the ESSER 3 money do we have left? Is it like 400 and some odd thousand? Because what I want to ask for is, I've been doing a lot of research on UV light and how important it's being used in hospitals to eradicate viruses, MRSA, those type of things. And I have a handout. Kevin, I can't walk. Would you hand these out?
I'm sorry, point of order. Let's stick to this one, Linda, but I think
Well,
maybe.
I wanted added on to that HVAC.
Yeah, so this was just for this school facilities board. We're just approving that. But if you want to bring it up later, if there's any community comments and that's something that you want to bring up, we can kind of look at that.
We can bring it up as a future agenda item as well.
Yeah.
But we can't go off agendas,
Yeah,
you know.
that's
And this is being
what
paid
we'd be
for by
doing.
school facilities.
Right, but I want this as an add-on to.
To the school facilities?
Yeah, because we're just approving the FSBs just for this HVAC unit specifically. Okay, any other discussion? All right. So consider approving the school facilities oversight board's terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the Building Renewal Grant Fund for PUSD school sites. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I'll take a second.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain. I want more information then.
Okay, so you're abstaining for more information, Linda?
Yeah, I don't want to have to table it.
Mr. Galagowski, President, maybe I can help. This specifically, in the way the School Facilities Board works, is it's a like-for-like replacement. And so if we were to upgrade or do anything that's an add-on, it's not a like-for-like. And so we have a 3-ton unit that went out, so we're replacing it with a 3-ton unit, and that's the extent that we would be able to use School Facility Board funds. And so,
Not a separate item.
unless we want to say, no, we would not like to have that money from the School Facilities Board, and you can vote no on this, and then we can use our funds, our local funds, to branch out from that is there. But this is for a 3-ton HVAC, replacing a 3-ton HVAC.
Okay.
This motion passed.
It says passes as 3-1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, thank you, though. Yeah. All right, item 8C1.
Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Moore?
As presented.
Item 8C2, community comments. Andy?
I was able to do some volunteer work at the high school, and just want to point out students that are struggling with academics, and it's really great to have resources in the community like the Launchpad that provide academic mentoring and tutoring free of charge. So if our students are not comfortable getting tutoring at the high school, they have a place to go. And it's really appreciated, I think. Students are really appreciative of that help. So I just wanted to share that with what I'm seeing and hearing from the groups I work with.
Great.
That's an organization that makes our community stronger. We sure appreciate them.
Linda?
What can I do?
So community
present
comments? So if you have
Okay.
any community comments?
So as I was saying, it's a pretty good thing for us to have, and it's pretty safe. So, Kevin, would you give
Could
these
we,
out to?
Could we request to have it as a future agenda item? Is that what we're
I don't
trying to
know.
do?
Yeah, I guess.
I think that's probably what would be more
Since we're
appropriate.
replacing these, I'd like to,
Yeah, if it's something we're going to
give
have a
these
discussion
here.
around, we would need to have it agendized. If you want to just
Oh,
share some
okay.
information now, you can do that real quick.
So if this is an item that, you've done some research on, we'd like to look into, we can look into placing it on the next agenda, if that works. If that works?
yeah, I'd like
Okay.
that then. Okay.
Any other comments, community comments that you'd have? Linda? No?
No, thanks.
All right, you bet.
I'm
Jay?
good.
All right. One thing that we're seeing around town are the billboards, if you will, or the banners. We had one here on the A+ or the A rating. A lot of people were asking about that. We had a lot of people just yesterday at our president's roundtable that were congratulating PUSD specifically on it. They didn't know how difficult that is, and those are fellow board members just commending us on the rating, especially as a district. I'd love to see, we've done this on Galileo. I'd love to see on the next agenda, just what does that mean? What's the breakdown on it? I think we've spoken about it, but we have not seen the breakdown on it, and the community deserves really to know what's going on and what it does truly mean to be an A-rated school. So, love to see that.
Just piggybacking on that really quick, I've got a friend in town who said, hey, I heard that you got a bunch of A schools, congratulations. How does that work? And I said, well, for our K through 8 schools, it's based entirely on test scores that we take in the spring, one day of science. And he's like, wait a minute, what? They're trying to advertise to parents what quality of schools you have based on one day of testing? I said, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of aspects to it, what kind of growth we got, what kind of proficiency, various subgroups, et cetera, but
is literally all about that one test. And for the high school, there's additional pieces. We can look into that if the board wants to hear more about that. But he was shocked. He said, I've heard good things. I know you've got great programs, et cetera, so it doesn't really matter how parents feel about it. Nope. Doesn't really matter what, if you offer art or music or PE like a lot of elementary schools don't these days. Nope. It's all about test scores? Yeah. He said, well, congratulations on having such strong test scores compared to the rest of the state. I said, well, thanks. But yeah, that's a common misconception that people have, is there's more to it than that. We're proud that this time around, our test scores looked really good compared to the rest of the state. We got A's, but yeah, it's pretty narrowly focused.
Yeah, you bet. No, love to see it, though. Thank you. All right, 8C3, school district governance book study discussion. Mr. Tenney.
Okay. Yeah, so I've reached out to board members individually and collectively in my recent board report about this. There's a book, it's got kind of a funny name, that was introduced to me when we were actually down at the ASBA conference in December. It was Mr. Binder actually had a former colleague of his who's a superintendent down the valley, and he said, I'm actually using this book, it's been terrific. We've talked about it as a board. It's really kind of helped us learn about our roles, see ways that we can be more supportive of the learning in the district, et cetera. And he said, I'd really recommend it. So the name was intriguing. It's called How Not to Be a Terrible School Board Member. And then more important to me is the subtitle, Lessons for School Administrators and Board Members. So I thought, well, it's kind of intriguing. It doesn't look too long. I'll order myself a copy, so I got a used copy off of Amazon. I looked at it and I said, you know what, the title is tongue-in-cheek, but the content is excellent. There are, how many are there? There's about, 28. There's 28 different kind of little case studies. They're only 3 or 4 pages long about things that a board member could do or could not do to be supportive of their school district and interfacing with staff, interfacing with the superintendent, whatnot. And so I thought, this is good enough. I don't want to offend any of our board members, make them think I think they're terrible, because none of our board members are terrible. But I got one for each of you for Christmas, and I was able to give it to you for Christmas. And some of you looked at me like, this is the worst Christmas present I've ever gotten in my life. But since then, I've understand that one of the schools over on the other side of the valley in Yavapai County is doing a similar thing. I don't know if it's with the same book or not, but they're doing a book study at the beginning of each of their board meetings. So they have a public study session at the beginning of each board member for 20 minutes, and they look at one of the cases in this book, and they say, okay, well, terrible habit number 6, solicit complaints from teachers and staff. And they look at the little case there, and okay, what did this person do well? What could they have done better? What are some options that you've got if you want to improve your district in a certain way? Is this the best way to go about it, et cetera? Talks a lot about, again, the role of the superintendent and other school leaders, the role of board members, and I thought, well, let me broach this with the board and see if you're interested in around this book or something else. If the title is like, that's a little kooky for me, if you'd like to look into how we can develop our governance skills and our governance team around a book study. Again, one model would be 20 minutes, start at 5 o'clock and have a study session where we can discuss openly all of these things at that time, and then adjourn that, go into our regular study and voting session like we have from month to month. If we had a particularly full agenda, I would recommend that we not do it. We wouldn't have to do it every month. It's totally up to how you want to do things. But anyhow, I know it's a model that's being used successfully in some other school districts. I thought it would be a good idea for us to dig in and take a look at some of the things that we could do to, again, be a stronger governance team. So wondered what your thoughts are about that.
Thoughts? Well, when I got my book, I was a bit offended, but it was Christmas time, and I didn't want to say, I hate your Christmas gift.
Well, thank you for that.
But
and I made clear at the time that this was not about any certain person, right?
Well,
it's his tongue-in-cheek name for it.
So I came up with some other possible titles.
Oh, love it.
So I think I'll share those. How Not to Be a Terrible School Superintendent.
Perfect.
How do you like that?
I love it.
Or how you are behooved to go along and to get along. Well, no, maybe not. How Not to Rock the Boat.
None of those things are
No,
touched on in here.
This was back in December. How Not to Listen to the Stakeholders. And I thought, I better go ahead and read this book.
Good idea.
So I have been highlighting different things, and I'd like to be in on the book study.
Okay,
But
great.
we don't have to call it any of those suggestions.
We can call it whatever, you can call it Leslie if you want. Any other thoughts from the board? Do you think this is a good idea to maybe, each of you have had a chance to kind of scan through it. They're pretty short. I think, again, the title is tongue-in-cheek, and the scenarios are kind of tongue-in-cheek as well, right? Board member A did something that's kind of ridiculous that we would never do. But then it brings into focus for us, what things could we do? If we're interested in, I'm a board member who wants to see test scores go up. What are some things that I could do for that? What's my role in that? And how do I work with the superintendent and other district leaders to make sure that we move toward that goal together? That's kind of the idea. Again, sort of a silly title for sure, tongue-in-cheek, like I say.
But it's good for civil discourse.
Yeah.
So we all need practice with that.
Other
I'm on
thoughts?
board.
I'm on board. I'd be fine with it.
Me too. One thing that, last night, we, as board presidents, we got to ask questions. And there was a laundry list of questions that we had. And the one that I asked out of the fray was, what are some of the things that boards do that they've had success in trying to ensure that you have a cordial, have a respectable board, especially in a public environment. And it was interesting. It was, there was a suggestion of, you could do a book study. That was one that Cottonwood Unified had done. But overwhelmingly, it was a retreat, and a retreat that just focused specifically on how do we treat each other as board members. And there are experts in the field that we have locally that they recommend, that these different districts have recommended. And that's something that I would be more interested in. I think this is a great tool. And maybe we even incorporate this when we do the retreat, some chapters. But I'd be very open to trying it out, the first 15 minutes of the meeting. Just let the public know that, hey, we're going to be discussing a topic, a chapter. And then we'll do a quick discussion. Everybody kind of see how we're developing as a board, which is important in front of everybody. And this can be a vehicle for us to, be more cordial and understand each other. And we all have passions, and we see that. And I just like for all of us personally to kind of see how this does work for us, and also entertain a retreat that is a solid retreat, not just one topic. So that's what I would be bringing forth throughout the year.
If we do this 2 or 3 times and you say, that's great, well, let's do it 2 or 3 more times. If we do it 2 or 3 times, you say, we're spinning our wheels here. This doesn't help. We don't have to do it anymore. But I thought, let's try it out and see if it's something that works as well for us as I have had reported to me. It's worked in other districts for it to build our team.
Yeah, let's see how it works.
So what should we do? We need some kind of an idea. Should we read the first terrible habit and be prepared to speak about that? Or how do we want to progress for that? Board?
Yeah, I'd recommend that if you, Mr. Tenney, if you could just kind of start the discussion and this, give us a topic, and then give us a date that if it's the next board meeting, then what's the one that we would start off with? And then I would limit it to 15 minutes, for the beginning of the board meeting.
Great.
And then, so that would go out on the agenda, and then we go from there. How's that sound?
Linda asked a great question, though, for format-wise. Do you want me to just choose one randomly? Do you want me to think, you know what, Andy's had a real problem with this recently. I'll go over this one?
Pin
Or
the tail on the donkey.
Or should we go in order from 1 to 28? Should we go backwards from 28 to 1? There's not a real method that's recommended.
I'd say start us off with something that's relevant for you, and then maybe the board can have a discussion about what the next item would be after we have the first one.
Yeah, because there's a lot of these that are
I do think
not
we all
applicable.
Yeah.
I do think we all need to kind of go through it, and I've read the book, and I need to reread it, but we could all go through it then and think of things that we think we
Okay.
might, but let's see how the first discussion
Okay.
goes.
Yeah, what I like is if we choose one, I just opened to number 6, I don't even know what it is, but it's like 3 pages. So
Yeah.
if you totally forget about it until 5 minutes before the board meeting, you can scan over it, be ready for the discussion. Or if you want, you can, come loaded for bear and say, here I go, I can't wait to talk about this one, whatever works for you.
15 minutes. 15 minutes.
How many minutes should we spend on this, Sam? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Or less. Good deal. All right. Moving on to 8C4, meeting dates, regular study and voting session, March 5th, 2024, 5 o'clock, right here. Other key dates, Friday, February 16th is Professional Development Day, as we know, and then Monday, February 19th is President's Day. All PUSD schools and sites are closed. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to this? I don't think so. All right.